All right. Guess what? Thank you guys for tuning in to another Team Ambition Fitness podcast. I'm your host, John Robinson. And I thought today we'd do something a little different. Typically, I have somebody I co-host or somebody I'm interviewing, but today we're going to do some Q&A. So a lot of these questions are comprised from our poll we did this week. Some of the questions I actually got prior to doing this podcast. Some of the common questions that you may have you've heard before, maybe some myths, some things of that nature, but also some of the things I run through with some of the current people that I coach when we do our consultations. When we do our consultations. So, without further ado, let me also say this: please make sure you like, subscribe, share. If nothing else, share if you find value in this podcast. Also, I always like to start my podcast with gratitude. So I want to also thank everybody who's allowed me to be a part of their process in regards to their fitness journey, their nutritional journey, whether they're getting on stage, whatever the case may be. I'm very, very thankful for every single person allowing me to be a part of the process. Also, I want to thank my wife, who's been a solid rock in this whole foundation this business that we built. She's the foundation of this. So with that being said, I promised her I would answer her very first question. All right, so Khalil, my wife, asked me, my question is, how much do you love your wife? Would you give your last piece of cheesecake to me? So what a great way to start this question, this Q&A with a funny joke. But I think she was serious. So would I give my last piece of cheesecake? Unfortunately not. You know how I feel about cheesecake. That is like my favorite dessert. It doesn't matter what flavor it is. I just love cheesecake. So unfortunately not. All right, so let's dive into some questions. I broke these up into nutrition. We'll talk a little bit about nutrition first, and then we'll go into exercise, workout, training, everybody's favorite stuff. All right, so but I want to dive into the nutrition first. So this one, I'm going to give you guys a scenario that I actually got this right before this podcast. Shout out Crystal. So Crystal has a client who's a male who went from 200 pounds to 180 pounds. So 200 to 180 pounds within 2 or 3 months. He wants to see his abs and also still lose body weight. He's currently eating 1,800 calories and has been in a deficit over the last 2 to 3 months. What are your thoughts or approach to help him see his abs and while also build muscle? All right, so something like that. So I know there's a lot of different variables, but that was just, the gist of it. So the first thing I would do is if the person wants to see his abs, of course, you're already in a deficit. So when it comes to a training perspective, remember that abdominals are still a muscle group. So you still train it as like you do legs or your back or your body, or your biceps, whatever. So you want to add some form of resistance training to the abdominals. So because when that person is losing weight, they still want to be able to see their abs. So if they don't have any muscles in the core and the ab, then 9 times out of 10 it's going to look fairly flat. So you won't see that pop that you're looking for. All right. So that from a trainer's perspective, that's one thing I would do. One of the things I would do from a nutritional standpoint, I think that sounds like if he's already in a deficit for the last 2 or 3 months, I would do reverse dieting. All right. That's probably the approach I would take. One or two things: do reverse dieting, or you may do some carb cycling. Those are usually my go-tos, and I'm gonna dive actually a little bit deeper into what reverse dieting is. So that'd be my rebuttal to that, or that'd be my answer to that. So first thing is the training aspect of things. Maybe two or 3 times out of the week. Maybe just start on the lower end, 2 days. Make sure when they're doing ab training, make sure there's some form of resistance there, some type of progressive overload as well. So I would make sure there's actually doing some weight exercises, okay? Not just body weight. If barring what's going on with the person, if the person has ailments or back issues or anything like that, you may want to start with body weight. But as long as that person doesn't have any of those things I just said, that's probably the direction I would go. All right, so what is reverse dieting? All right, and how do I explain that theory? So reverse dieting in a nutshell, right? I'm gonna say this, make it super duper easy. All right, super duper uber easy. So reverse dieting is a person who is when you, instead of decreasing food, you increase your food, right? Not all at one time. You do it gradually, just like you do in a deficit. So a person in one of the category from this example. So if a person is at 1,800 calories, right, and let's say that person started at maybe at, let's say 2,500. Well, what you want to do is, if the person's at 18, every week or maybe every 2 weeks, you're just increasing food by 100, maybe 200 calories gradually. You don't do it all at one time because that can be kind of scary to somebody who thinks, because remember, the thought process is if I decrease food, I can lose weight. But what little that people don't understand is your metabolism, right? Metabolism can also help you. So if you increase food while you after being in a deficit, think about it like this: your metabolism, you're eating all this food, your body's like, where's all this food coming from? I gotta burn it up. I gotta burn it up. I gotta burn it up. So that's also going to help you. That's almost a form of carb cycling as well. So let me explain what carb cycling is. So there's a number of ways of doing carb cycling. All right, so you got 7 days. You can do, out of those 7 days, you can do 4 days of a low carb and then 3 days of high carb. Or you can do 5 days of low carbs and then 2 days of high carbs. So those are some different tactics or strategies you can use to, when you hit that plateau, those are some different strategies you can use to kind of break that plateau. So again, reverse dieting is pretty much increasing food when you're in a deficit. That's something you probably want to do for at least just start off 4 to 5 weeks just to see where you're at and see how your body reacts to it. Okay, I got to answer this one. So this is one of the questions on the poll. Shout out, Chris. How to make chicken taste better. So there's a number of different ways you can make chicken taste better. You have a lot of different seasons out there. I personally like grilled chicken. I don't mind baked chicken. I don't do fried chicken. Ironically, right? But yeah, so for me, I like grilled chicken. So you can do a bunch of different type of seasonings, but it's all about what flavors fit your palate, what you like to eat. So for me, I think grilled chicken is the best, and then add some seasoning. All right. So along that, so here's another question I get. How much protein do I need? So if you're 150 pounds and you want to get down to 140 pounds, 140 grams of protein is where you should start. So you don't want to have anything, above that. Should I cut out carbs? So I know that a lot of people think that carbs are the enemy or has been demonized, but you need carbs. Carbs is what gives you energy, right? So if you take away too many carbs too fast, you take away your carbs too much too fast, you're going to end up losing a lot of energy, and that can also affect how you sleep, how you perform, especially when you want to train. So I think that when it comes to like trying to cut your carbs, you don't want to cut them all out completely. And then as we talked a little bit about reverse dieting and carb cycling, there's ways you can utilize your carbs to make it benefit you and your goals. Okay, what should I eat before and after a workout? So for me, I like to keep it simple. I like to keep it super duper simple, because if you give too much, it can be overwhelming, right? Especially if you're just starting out. So I like to have just protein, right after you worked out, whether that's cardio or you've done some weight training or whatever the case may be. I think the best thing to have is cardio, at least within 30 minutes or so. All right. How many calories should I eat each day? So that's going to dictate on your goals, and that's going to dictate on who you are, right? Because, what I need to eat for, a daily expenditure of my calories is going to be different from what, another male who is, older, younger, bigger, taller. There's so many different variables to that. So I think the easiest way to really do that is just to understand your macronutrients and because there's a bunch of different macro calculators out there, or you could talk to a personal trainer, your coaches, dietitians, nutritionists, whatnot. I think, just starting simple that way and just seeing what your calories are just to maintain your current weight. I think that's probably the easiest and most efficient way to go. And then if you're looking to lose weight, and then you can start slowly doing a deficit. Typically they say, if you're required to have 2,000 calories, a day to live, and you want to lose weight, the rule of thumb is 500 calories less. So that's about 1,500. So I think the best and easiest way to do that is not do that all at one time. You decrease, slowly. Maybe start with 100. Maybe start with 250. And you do that for a few weeks and see how that feels for you and how your body reacts to that. All right, some best foods for building muscle. What are the best foods for building muscle? I think whole foods. You can't go wrong with that. And again, number one thing would be protein. When you go grocery shopping, is a rule of thumb. Everything on the outside of the supermarket, the grocery store, and then everything in the middle. You may want to go to last. So protein. Start with protein. Let protein be the number one thing that you focus on. Out of the three macros, your carbs, fats, and proteins. All right. Supplementation. Okay, I love this one. Do I need supplements? All right, so to me, when it comes to supplements are used to replace and enhance, right? So, for example, whey protein. After you do a workout, 9 times out of 10, you don't really want to, sit there and try to go cook up some eggs or have some lean meat or something like that. It's so quick and easy just to have your whey protein right after your workout. So some of the main staples I like to people to have. I have the people I coach, the privileged people I coach, just to start off on the basics. Whey protein, a multivitamin, fish oil, creatine. Those are like the staples I like people to use when it comes to supplements. I mean, there's a bunch of other supplements out there when it comes to brands. For me, I'm not really big on brands, but because for the most part, they're all made the same for the most part. So those are usually my go-to supplements when it comes to just, you're just starting a program, you're just starting, your fitness journey, whatever the case may be. Those are the supplements I recommend, creatine, whey protein, fish oil, and then a multivitamin for men and or multivitamin for women. So, here we go. Can I still eat my favorite foods and lose weight? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I like to call it having a treat meal. My wife likes to say that. Call it a treat meal, right? You're playing the numbers or you can play the ratios, right? So I think a lot of times people think that if I eat this cake, if I eat this cookie, if I eat this brownie, it sets me back. Well, imagine this. Let's say Sunday through Friday, right? Or Monday through Friday. We'll make it even better. Monday through Friday, you go to work, you've been, on your game, you've worked out, you've been, tracking meals, and you've been, committed to your program, whatever the case may be. And then Saturday comes, that should be your if you pick a meal, whatever, that should be a day where you say, you know what, I'm going to enjoy my pizza. I'm going to enjoy a brownie. I'm going to enjoy the food, because that one day or that one meal is not going to kill you it's not going to diminish the work you've done from Monday through Friday. So I think it's more so also just keeping that in mind, almost making that reframe. So yes, you still can enjoy your foods while losing weight. Why am I not losing weight even though I'm exercising? I love this question. There's so many variables to this, right? So the nutritional aspect of things, I think that as long as your nutrition is good, everything else will follow. But then also we have to keep in mind, are you sleeping better? How's your sleep going? How's your daily steps? Are you constantly active? What's your day job like? So if you have a job where you're sitting down, it's going to require that, your nutrition is going to be a little different versus if you're, constantly up and down, like, if you're a firefighter or you're somebody who has a manual labor job where you're constantly moving, right? So that's going to be a little different. So I think the best way to answer that is if you're not losing weight, even though you're exercising, the first thing you want to look at is your nutrition. I think that's going to be where you can see where you need to make those adjustments. Not saying that you need to go out and do more exercises, go kill yourself and do more cardio and more days of working out, all the things of that nature. I think the first thing you want to look at is the nutrition first, and then look at maybe how's your sleep habits. If you're only averaging 4 or 5 hours of sleep, that can play a role. So those are some of the nuances that go into that. All right. Those are the main things I've gotten in regards to nutrition. I think that, nutrition is the number one thing that's going to help people be successful in their journey of either losing weight and body fat or if somebody's looking to build muscle and, put on some size. That's where the rubber meets the road. So nutrition to me is the number one thing that's going to help you be successful. I think me included, I think a lot of us, we struggle with not necessarily the food we need to eat. I think it's more so sometimes it's the portion control. One of the things I found that is really, really beneficial, and me and my wife talked about this years ago, and we got this from Japan, to be honest with you, because their portion sizes aren't, at least at that time, wasn't that big, right? So one of the things we was like, hey, if we eat on smaller plates, that will help us control our portion size. So a lot of times I think in our culture here in America, right, we're so used to eating on big plates, right? So whatever our parents teach us, eat everything on your plate. You can't go back for seconds until you eat everything on your plate. Well, if you have a smaller plate, nine times out of 10, you're not going to go up for seconds. You're going to eat what's on your plate. Oh, actually, here's another one. Tracking meals, tracking your macros. Why is that important? Okay. Tracking your food is going to be very, very important because you need to know what you're eating, right? How much you're eating and what you're eating. And once you actually see that for yourself, that will also help you understand what your coach is having you do, or your personal trainer, or your, whoever is helping you on your journey. Or if you're doing this by yourself, even if you're doing this by yourself, that will help you identify where you need to make those modifications. A lot of times, the people I've coached, when we do our consultations, I ask them, hey, talk to me about what you had from the time you woke up to the time you went to bed. What did you have for food, right? 85% of the time is, well, I get up, I have coffee, I don't eat again. Well, I don't eat at all breakfast. I won't eat until maybe 11, 12, maybe 1 o'clock during lunch. And during lunch, it's, a salad or, chicken and rice or something like that. And then they won't eat again until nighttime. So, excuse me, until nighttime, eating maybe what they had for lunch, if that. So a lot of times, if we don't see what we're eating and we track that, let's say we just track that based off that scenario, and that person's, let's say they're supposed to have 2,000 calories. Well, 9 times out of 10, they probably only ate roughly about 8, maybe 1,000 calories, maybe. And they're under eating. So that's when, reverse dieting is going to come into place. So there's a lot of value in tracking your meals. Once you get to a point where you're able to track your meals and you understand, you shouldn't have to track the rest of your life, because your body's going to give you signals, right? So what are the signals we're looking for? The signals you're looking for is, you're going to hear your stomach growling, your mouth may be dry. That means you're thirsty, kind of like myself. I need to swig. Your mouth may be dry. That's telling you, hey, I'm thirsty. Your stomach growling, hey, I'm hungry. So there's different signals that your body's going to tell you. Hey, I'm sleepy. You start yawning, right? So those are the signals that your body's telling you, hey, I need to replenish my food sources, or I need some water, or I need to go to rest. So those are some of the things that I think that's going to be very important, and it's very important to track your meals. You shouldn't have to track your meals the rest of your life. Maybe the first week, maybe 2 weeks, and once you get in the habit of doing that, I always like to say, hey, track 3 days out of 7. If you can do every single day, hey, fantastic. But just track 3 days out of 7 just to see where you're at. So, all right. We're going to transition into training. This is everybody's favorite, me included. I ain't gonna lie. All right, so I got this for Erica. Erica, this one's for you. All right, so women in midlife that want fat loss, where should they focus first? Cardio, lifting, or a combo? Great question. Cardio is great. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with cardio. So this is questions. The way I'm going to answer this for somebody who's just starting out, not a runner or anything like that, just starting out. Right, all these questions are going for people, more so for the people just starting out, not the ones who've been doing this for God knows how long. All right, so first thing is they want to start with strength training, resistance training. I think there's more bang for your buck in resistance training, because even if you just lift weights, after you're done, your body's still, your metabolism is working for you even after you get out the gym. Where cardio is just going to work, it's just burning calories for the moment, for like while you're running or while you're doing whatever that cardio is, whether that's the elliptical or the treadmill, Stairmaster, whatever, is only burning calories at that time. Versus weight training, resistance training is going to burn calories even when you're done. So for this person, what I would like to see this person do is, have maybe do 2 or 3 days that's just starting out, upper body day, lower body day, and then, for the last 15, 20 minutes, do some cardio. Doesn't mean there has to be a hit cardio, but I would just do what's called steady state, 15, 20 minutes, just nice, easy, breezy type of cardio. It doesn't have to be all out sprints and stuff of that nature. More so for people who are just starting out. All right, looks like there's a part 2 to this question. Midlife woman who is new to strength training, what are your 3 favorite exercises and why? Love this question. All right, so compound movements, compound exercises, meaning that it's not just working one body part, it's working a lot of all the other body parts, So for example, deadlifting, that's a great compound movement exercise. So you're working majority of your full body. Squats, that's another good compound exercise. You can do what's called thrusters. Thrusters meaning you can have a dumbbell or a barbell, and you're squatting and you're pushing up. So that's another compound movement. Excuse me. So thrusters, deadlifts, squats, full body engagements are what's going to be really, really good. Okay. I have this one. How to grow delts and smaller waist. Okay. This actually, I remember this. This actually came from a bodybuilder, so I'm going to answer this one. All right, so this is more of an advanced type of answer. So the way I would do this, and I've done this with some of our other team members, the way I would do this is, you have a shoulder day, which is your delts, right? Your delts, your front, lateral, and rear, right? So if you want to grow those, I would say maybe have 2 days. Let's say you use 2 days. Excuse me, 2 days, not 3, 2 days. So the first day, let's say you're working shoulders. That can be like, unilateral. Yeah, excuse me, bilateral. So you're using actually 2 hands, right? Doing presses. And then the next day, or maybe 2 days later, recover and do iso work, right? You're using 1 arm, right? So that's going to help for symmetry. So I would say one day you're using 2 hands or 2 arms, whatnot movements, and then the next day would be like an iso movement. That'll help with your delts. Of course, nutrition has to be good. You probably want to make sure you're in a not a deficit, but in an increase, so you can actually build up muscle, so you have more food in your body. But now having a smaller waist. Now, if you're trying to do both at the same time, that could be a challenge. But first, I'm always going to say start with your nutrition. One way I found that it's going to be, and was a woman actually. One way, and this can be for men too, but one way you can make your waist smaller. There's some people who don't believe in it. I do. You can do waist trainers. Also, the weight belts. Keep your weight belt nice and tight when you're in the gym. But also, you can do vacuums. That's another form of. It's going to also help you posing. But anyway, do vacuums. Those are really, really good to help your control your breathing, but also it helps get your waist smaller. You don't want to also, when you're trying to make your waist smaller, you don't want to do too much heavy lifting on doing oblique movements. Because that'll make your obliques your sides. Obliques are your sides. It'll make your obliques a little bit bulky, and you don't want your waist to be bulky. If that's your goal, is to make it smaller. So those are just some other ways, some tips that you can do. So definitely you want to do vacuums. I like to say do vacuums first thing in the morning when your stomach's empty. You don't want to do vacuums when you've eaten throughout the day. So I think the best time to do them is first thing in the morning. All right, so what's the best workout for losing fat? So again, you can do HIIT, you can do cardio, you can do a mixture, but I think strength training is going to be always king. So for example, if you decide to do, 1 day, 1 or 2 days weight training, and then maybe 1 day of a HIIT or just cardio, that's one way you can go about doing it. There's a number of ways of doing it, but first thing is always going to be strength training. How long should workouts be? You know what? I literally had this conversation with a friend of mine, Chris, out in Tampa. So we literally just had this conversation. So I think that I want to break this down so I make it elementary as much as possible. So I think a good workout shouldn't be more than 60 minutes, right? Maybe an hour and 15, maybe, right? Because you need the breaks. A lot of times, I think, me included, I just had to start getting the habit of doing this myself. Taking like at least a minute, 2 minutes in between sets, especially doing weight training, because your body needs that time to recover, and so you can maximize your lifts. So I think that at least 60 minutes to a minute. 60 minutes. Yeah, that is right. 60 minutes, at least an hour to maybe an hour and 15 minutes. More so in weight training. Now, if you're doing cardio sessions, you're just there for cardio, maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes. If you're doing HIIT, maybe 20, 30 minutes or something along that line. Should I do cardio before or after lifting weights? I believe you should do cardio after, because you want to maximize your time in the gym or that exercise, that workout. I think you should do cardio after 15 to 20 minutes, barring what you're doing for what the goal is. But right after you do weight training, knock out some cardio. How much weight should I lift? All right, so that's going to be more so depending on the level you're at and who you are. I think the best way to judge that is do what's called your 1 rep maximum. So if you're on the bench doing squat, you see how much you can lift with 1 rep. So, and then you divide that out. You can divide that and break it into how you need to. But I would definitely consult a personal trainer on that one, or myself. All right. How many sets and reps? That's going to be situational. I think when it comes to sets and reps, depends on your goal. But I think a good starting point would be 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps, depending on what the exercise is. That was a good one. Why am I not seeing results? Okay. So from why you're not seeing results when it comes to the exercise part. So I had this conversation this morning with one of my team members, one of the ladies I coach, Crystal. Shout out Crystal. So I think for that, right, when we hear the word progressive overload, some people don't know what that is. So I like to put it in layman's terms. Let's work to get stronger. That's just another way you can say progressive overload, in my opinion. So I think that progressive overload is pretty much what that is that means that you're either adding more weight each week or each workout. More 9 times out of 10, it's going to be each week. You're adding more weight. You can be adding more reps, or you could be adding more sets. It's just whatever you done last week, you get better each week. So that's that 1% getting better each week. So that's predominantly what progressive overload is, in my opinion. So I think that's where you probably want to see the results. Also, a lot of times, and I see this all the time in the gym, people do the same thing repetitively, which you should do, but not a lot of times people don't change their workout routine. Every 4 to 5 weeks, maybe 6 weeks, you should be changing your workout routine. You shouldn't be doing the same exercise for 8, 12 weeks. You need to switch that up because your body's gotten used to it. All right. Do I need rest days? Absolutely. Your body grows when you're out the gym. So the rest recovery, you need the rest days. I think somebody who's just starting out, I hate to say it like this, but sometimes we have the New Year's resolutions, right? A lot of times they burn out before 2 weeks into it because they're starting too fast, right? They want to hit the gym and do 6-7 days a week and they get burned out. Well, I think if you're just starting out, start with maybe 2 days. Born what your life looks like, start with 2 days, maybe 3 days. And in between, it could be a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, whatever your schedule allows for. So you're getting those days of rest and recovery, because rest and recovery is just as important as your nutrition, if not more. All right. So I gave you guys some of the what. Now I'm going to give you guys some of the how. So we always talk about consistency. Consistency is very, very important for any successful goal that you may have. But how do you build consistency? What I found works is building a system, having a system. So I'm going to give you guys my system, right? So my system is this. I get up. I always have my clothes ready the night before, because I don't like to get up in the morning. I don't want to wake my wife up, by the way, because she gets so mad at me. Anyway, the night before, I have my clothes laid out. I have all my supplements ready. So all I need to do is get up, do my morning routine. Of course, I get up and do my gratefulness. I do prayer, and I do reflection, and I do my gratitude, gratefulness. Do my gratitude. So I get up, have my clothes laid out. All I need to do is put them on. I'm out the door. If I need to do whatever I need to do in regards to my supplements, maybe that's a pre-workout, or if I need to eat something, whatever. That's my system. And then I go right to the gym, come back, and live out the rest of my day. So as long as you have a system in place, that's going to help with your consistency. And that helps with not having those excuses or those hiccups. So in order to get consistency, create a system. All right, another thing, non-negotiables. A lot of you all who I currently coach have heard this speech before. You got to have a non-negotiable, and it can be as small as 1 non-negotiable per section. When I say that, meaning a non-negotiable for training. My 1 non-negotiable for training would be I will not miss 2 days in a row. Right? If I have it scheduled out, of course I have my rest days, but I will not miss 2 days in a row. So that's one of my non-negotiables. When it comes to nutrition, it can be one of my non-negotiable is every single meal that I have has to have protein in it. That's a non-negotiable. One non-negotiable for sleep. No matter what, I have to be in bed, no TV, no nothing by 9:30. I have to have that done. I'm fortunate that my wife, she makes sure that happens because she will not let me interrupt her sleep. So that's a non-negotiable. So I think, starting with 1 non-negotiable in training in nutrition, in your rest. That will help build that consistency that you built with your system. The next thing is having benchmarks, goal setting benchmarks. So I've done this with some of our team members, having benchmarks. So it can be every month you have a target goal, because a lot of times we see 3 months in advance, 6 months in advance, a year in advance, and that's a big hill to climb. So maybe start with having benchmarks, weekly benchmarks that lead into monthly benchmarks. And it's also going to help you, because once you hit those benchmarks, you start celebrating those small wins. And those are the small wins I'm talking about. Well, those are some of the small wins. The other small wins are, do you feel good? You sleeping better? Whatever. All right. And we always, last but not least, once you have all three of those together, you have discipline. Discipline seems like it's a demonized word too, but it is the core of every successful person. Every person that you follow, every person that you look up to has done these four things, some form or fashion. I think that those are going to be the core things that's going to help you get to those goals. Everything we just talked about in regards to for this Q&A, whether it's nutrition, whether it's the training, whether it's the sleep, or whatever case may be, those are going to be the 4 pillars. And there's others, but if you start there, I guarantee you're going to hit your goals. All right. Well, we're going to wrap this Q&A session up. I wholeheartedly appreciate you guys listening. Looking forward to our next podcast. And like I said in the beginning, like, share, subscribe. I'm super duper excited about doing this podcast and you guys following us. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. I'll talk to you guys soon. This is for my Team Ambition members. Bye. Peace.